Welcome to Victorious Rise, the podcast. And today, I'm going to talk a little bit longer than normal, but it's been a long day, but a good day in Jesus' name. And honestly, I've been sitting here reflecting on healing, real healing, deep healing, the kind of healing that doesn't happen overnight. But if we're honest, most of us want healing to happen like popcorn. We want one prayer, one breakthrough, one encounter, one moment, and suddenly everything's perfect. That's what we want. 1 minute we're broken, next minute we're healed. 1 minute we're struggling, next minute we're fully transformed. I was talking to my sister about this, and it's just like it would be lovely if it worked that way. But healing usually doesn't happen that way at all. Healing is often a process. And I think one of the hardest parts about healing is that trauma trains your mind to expect repetition. See, trauma says, it happened before. It's probably going to happen again. Don't get your hopes too high. Don't trust too much. Don't believe too deeply. Don't relax yet. Let's brace for everything. And after enough disappointment, pain starts becoming a pattern in your mind. You start expecting loss before loss even arrives. And what God has really been showing me these days is this. Sometimes we're not only fighting circumstances, sometimes we're fighting expectation. I'm going to repeat that. Sometimes we're not only fighting our circumstances, sometimes we're fighting expectation. It's an internal battle. We're fighting the expectation of disappointment, the expectation of abandonment, the expectation of failure, the expectation that something good won't stay. I'm going to repeat that one. The expectation that something good won't stay. And the scary part is that sometimes we don't even realize we're doing this. Because those thoughts become internal conversations. And a lot of people talk about thoughts. But what God has really been highlighting right now is that thoughts are unspoken words. And if you don't know anything about me, I emphasize how words are power. You speak life. What you say matters. The words that we speak create our environment, create our reality. And unspoken words are thoughts. So thoughts are unspoken words. And some of us are speaking death internally all day long without even realizing it. Not because we're evil, not because we hate ourselves, but because trauma has taught us survival. Trauma's taught us how to prepare for pain. Trauma taught us how to stay guarded, how to stay tense, how to stay emotionally prepared for disaster. And eventually, your nervous system starts reacting before life even happens. And I am a witness. Been there, done that, and sometimes struggle with it. Even now. So you start bracing for impact all the time. But recently, God has been pulling me back into alignment. And honestly, I realized I had drifted recently. I didn't realize I was in survival mode. Again, I hadn't drifted like completely away from God, but away from intentional alignment. See, I used to start my mornings very differently. I used to sit intentionally with God, invite Him in my thoughts, invite Him in my emotions, invite Him in my reactions, had Him sitting on the throne room of my heart, had Him alignment in so many different ways. And I used to remind myself, Jesus, you sit on the throne of my heart. You lead me. Heaven governs my day. Peace governs my mind. And somewhere along the way, survival mode got louder than alignment. And maybe somebody listening understands what I'm talking about. You still love God. You still pray. You still believe. But fear became louder. Stress became louder. Exhaustion became louder. Disappointment became louder. And before you realize it, you're reacting from wounds instead of responding from peace. I gotta repeat that. Before you realize it, you are reacting from wounds instead of responding from peace. But God has been reteaching me something. There is power in intentional words. Power in speaking life. Not fake positivity. Not pretending pain doesn't exist because it does. Not being in denial, but choosing agreement with heaven instead of agreement with fear. And again, recently I started doing something that honestly has been helping me tremendously. Whenever I start feeling overwhelmed, whenever I feel fear, anxiety arising, whenever survival mode starts speaking, and sometimes I literally need help doing it because sometimes my emotions, I get emotionally exhausted, my brain feels overwhelmed, my emotions are louder than my faith. In those moments, I stop and I say, Lord, help me realign. And then I begin speaking life intentionally. Not I'm forgotten, but I'm seen by God. Not nothing ever works, but God is actively working on my behalf. Not I'm always struggling, but I am transitioning into abundance, healing, and stability. And one thing I became very intentional about was removing languages that kept reinforcing negativity. Because words matter. Even intentional language matters. Again, I started realizing and remembering, these are things I know already, but when you're in survival mode, you forget everything. And I start remembering, faith comes by hearing. Not just by hearing sermons, not just by hearing words, but hearing truth repeatedly, hearing life repeatedly, hearing heaven repeatedly. And sometimes your spirit needs repetition because your trauma has been rehearsing fear for years. I have to repeat that one. Sometimes your spirit needs repetition. Repetition, words of life, because your trauma has been rehearsing fear for years. And recently I had a situation happen with my car. I was really exhausted, already overwhelmed, already mentally stretched, and then suddenly more problems appeared. And at first, I felt frustration rising immediately. I could feel survival mode trying to take over. The thoughts started, here we go again, another problem, another burden, another stressful situation. More work that we need to do. I'm just being real. But then I caught myself and I realized, no. We are not partnering. We are not binding with. We're not becoming friends with. We're not agreeing with fear again. And I had to do something intentionally. I had to intentionally stop, pause, breathe, and speak life into that situation. I did. I had to say, no, I'm not going to accept this mindset. Everything's going to work well. The people who I'm trying to contact about hitting my car is going to be okay. It's going to get paid for. Everything's going to be all right. Everything's going to be smooth. I'm not going to have to fight. Grace is all over this. And honestly, the situation worked out beautifully. Doors started opening quickly. People started helping immediately. Provision was already in place before I could even see it. And I sat there realizing God was taking care of me the entire time. But fear just tried to convince me otherwise. And somebody is probably listening to this right now needed to hear this. Everything is not falling apart. God is still moving. God is still protecting. God is still opening doors. God is still making a way. Out of no way, by the way. God is still providing, and God is still healing. Because healing is not just physical. I gotta repeat that. Healing is not just physical. Healing is learning how to think differently. Healing is learning how to speak differently. And learning is how to expect differently. Healing is learning how to stop rehearsing fear. So today, I just want to encourage you. Speak life over yourself. Speak life over your home. Speak life over your future. Speak life over your body. Speak life over your children if you have them, or the family members that matter to you. Speak life over your finances. Speak life over your projects. Speak life over your businesses and your ideas. Speak life over your calling. And when fear starts speaking louder than faith, pause and realign, because heaven still has the final word. I love you all, and I'll talk to you soon. God bless. Likes, share, subscribe, and tell me what you think. All right. Hopefully this helped someone. God bless you.